Okay, I think we're checking the levels as far as microphone and recording and everything. We're all good. I hope you all heard the rest of everything that I've just said. But if not, let me just start again, just quickly. Um, Now, we'll do a webinar like we've been doing every week, every Thursday. Different themes, educational, different type of products, how to build your product, how to do formulation, how to do your concept, your beverage site, consumer packaged goods, how to look and find a distributor, a cash and carry, a jobber, the difference between them, what's a best-selling proposition. Normally, Jorge Olson, the CEO of the company, Liquid Brands Management, does these webinars. I'm his VP of Sales and Operations. I've been working with him since 2000, over 12 years now. We've worked on from consulting to inception to sales and distribution. And it seems like 1,000 different products, but I would say more like 250. We currently have 24 different products in stores, selling combined, I would say, over 3.5 million across the U.S. Right? In sales, and these are entrepreneur new products that we have. We're an incubator. We do everything from concept, from the letter A to Z, all the way up to artwork, formulation, price breakdown, and getting you into stores, sales and distribution. And in these endeavors, throughout the 12 years, we've met a lot of quality people that have worked with us, like Rob McCormack. He's the Director of International Business Development at 5-Hour Energy. I'm sure everybody's heard 5-Hour Energy. Shot first to market, 0 to 600 million in 5 years. You know, he is in charge of the brand management from idea to execution, right? Including traditional media, online, on and off premise, promotional and POS programs, and guerrilla marketing tactics. In charge of the consumer goods. Professionally, he's been in the industry for years. He does all the global business development, work for 5-Hour Energy. He's in charge of Latin, Middle East, Europe. Think of him as the 5-Hour Energy company, everything except the U.S., right? But he works closely with all the 5-Hour Energy executives and owners, obviously. Now he's been with 5-Hour Energy for almost 4 years now. You know, he's before that he was with Jones Soda International as well for a little over 2 years, right? As a director, and then a little over 2 years in the production side of it, right? Now Rob is a good friend of our company. He's agreed to have an interview today. So Rob will start the interview. The first question, how do you sell your products internationally? That's the first question compiled by all the participants in the webinar. Okay, I think Rob's having some technical difficulties. It's not that you can't hear him. He's straightened these out. Just if you bear with us. Of course, it happens with when Jorge's not here. Doesn't happen to him. I've talked to Rob about these. I almost could answer them, but the point is for him. He's telling me that he'll join us He's here actually, but for some reason we can't hear him. So we're fixing the problem. And I can tell you that 5-Hour Energy has started to sell internationally from just last year. Many people think that because they're very popular in the last 6 years throughout the country, that they're everywhere. They're like Red Bull or Monster that have expanded, like Coca-Cola has expanded throughout the world, but they're new to the international market. They're just barely grabbing their first sales and their first, well, I would say since last year, their first distributors, right? There's still in some countries, in some ways, opportunity for international distributors with their company, but he can tell you more details about that. For us, for our services, we'll give you our number. Our local number in San Diego is 619-489-0230. And our 800 number is 888-276-5688. I know Rob is having some audio difficulties right now, so I just gave you our office numbers. Don't call to complain yet. We still have some time. I think we'll fix it in a minute or two. Again, those numbers are area code 619-489-0230 in San Diego, California, and 888-276-5688. Our website, you can visit our brands and what we do on liquidbrandsmanagement.com.
Monday.
It's spelled just like you see it in the presentation, top left corner, LIQUIDBRANDS, management.com, all one word. If you can log in, it's more about how to work with us, how to talk to us, schedule a conference, all of that. Let me see, I think Rob is about to join. Terribly sorry again, bear with me. If for some reason in the next 5 minutes or so we can't resolve this problem, we will reschedule and send out emails again. But the people here are telling me that that won't be necessary, that we will fix it right now. So now feel free to ask questions. You can be asking questions, as we go along, and I just have 5 starter questions for Rob, and then it's up to everybody here to ask Rob specific questions, either about your opportunities or his time during the 5-hour energy job project that he has right now. Yeah, the audio, I think, was a problem. The questions right now I'm getting is that we are having problems with the audio for Rob, that nobody can hear him. It's not much of an interview. Nobody can hear him, so I'm being assured that in the next 2-3 minutes it will be resolved. Again, Rob, so you can take a look at him right here. Handsome man, as he would tell you. Director of International Business Development, 5-Hour Energy. We picked 5-Hour Energy not because we are currently working with them, but also because they're one of a kind. They're a unique story. One of the great stories, like Coke and like Sobe and like Vitamin Water. The 5-Hour Energy has grown in 6 years from 0 to 600 million. No other company has done that in that period of time. Um, Now they're still privately owned. They sell domestically in the U.S. They spend around, they would say, 100 million right now in advertising through the years, per year, sorry, budget. They do it all in TV, advertising, educational, um, selling at their target market, cable channel. They buy a lot of regional, a lot of regional ads instead of national ads. So if you are in the East Coast, South, Midwest, or West Coast, and you're seeing 5-Hour Energy, those are not national commercials, they're local commercials. The advantage with that is that there are much less money to buy on a local area, and you get more bang for the buck because you can specify where the ratings are and what type of consumer you're trying to reach specifically. Now, right now, obviously in the U.S., this a brand that's everywhere that they're coming out with new extensions. Their last new brand extension was the pink lemonade flavor, which gives back to the breast cancer awareness. Now, that's very popular right now in the beverage industry. It's popular for, a lot of companies are giving back, are being, showing their heart, their true colors, giving back to the community or to certain organizations, nonprofit, helping other companies, helping either the homeless or other companies in, water. A lot of times, people like My Cause Water or water.org that give back to companies that don't have drinkable water is popular. Now, 5-Hour Energy chose the Breast Cancer Society. On the international base, growing every month exponentially. Now, like I said, Rob will tell you more about that when he comes on. Actually, he is on, but we can't hear him yet. Now, we do have a question we'll ask from Dennis that we'll ask Rob once we can hear him and his audio troubles are gone. Dennis, you ask, what does Rob think was the key to 5-Hour Energy success when compared to their competitors? We'll ask him to answer. But since this is one of the partners we used to work with and a company we analyzed a lot, I can tell you that first to market always helps. They created the energy shot category. Also, Asim asks, can you recommend co-packers for formulation and packaging? Yes, we can. Our company can. You can log on to liquidbrandsmanagement.com or you can go to 619-489-0230 for co-packer and formulation, custom help, or 888-276-5688, also for branding. John Murphy, is the volume better? I think that's the highest we can go right now on volume. Hopefully that's a little better. Mhm. Mhm. Okay.
Hello?
Yes, hello? Rob?
Eduardo, are you there?
Oh,
Yes,
yes.
can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Great. Good to know. No, is everybody on the call after 20 minutes of technical difficulties?
Yes, I know. I know. Well, I've been compiling questions for them. I talked a little bit about,
Okay,
yeah,
good. Good.
we can just dive in. We have a
Well,
lot of people
well,
waiting.
I yeah, sure. Well, I was, I guess, one of the lucky ones to hear you scrambling around trying to fill dead air for the last 20 minutes, but for some reason I couldn't speak. So, good job by your staff to try to make something happen, but I don't know. Anyway, nice to be here. Thank you for everybody joining us. Again, the purpose of these calls that Jorge and I are doing are really to get the message out there, to promote also our upcoming book, Brands Without Borders, which is really a focus on small to mid-sized companies who are interested in branching out and taking their brand outside of the United States. Again, I think Eduardo introduced me earlier. My name is Rob McCormack. I'm the Director of International Business for 5-Hour Energy. We're a nutritional supplement. You might have seen it around pretty much every local convenience store in the country. I have the amazing task of taking this brand outside of our borders here in the U.S. and launching it on a global scale. So I've had the great opportunity to deal with all aspects of business development, from a regulatory approval, logistics, distribution, search, as well as putting together consumer awareness programs through traditional media, whether it's traditional advertising like television, radio, print, to more sampling and more creative type solutions, as well as the in-store type of POS and advertising. So all of the stuff that you probably, the people that are on this call, have maybe had a taste of, and certainly have had the privilege to do this more on a global scale. So thank you for everybody joining the call. I apologize for the technical difficulties, and I'll do my best to kind of speed this along and get to your guys' questions if you have any. And again, we'll be doing these calls, try to do it on a bi-weekly basis, and continue to do that. So you're welcome to join us as these webinars continue. So with that, Eduardo, I'll go to you, and you can feel free to ask me questions. That I'm
Yes,
sure.
absolutely. Well, the first question is how to sell your products internationally.
Well, Eduardo, that's a very general question, and it
Yeah.
goes in many different phases. A lot of what this entire book that Jorge and I are writing right now will really try to break down a lot of the specifics. But since it's a general question, I'll give more of a general answer. And as we continue to do these webinars, we'll get into some more of the specifics and maybe some specific questions that you may have, the listeners may have. But overall, how to sell your products international, what you need to really focus on is, number one, which markets are you wanting to focus on? Meaning, which region, which particular country or region that make the most sense for your particular brand. And you should be doing a lot of research, and you can do that on your own just with the Google days. You can really find a lot of insight into what the country's GRP is, what type of products they currently have in that area, and really just breaking down the SWOT, the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities and threats that you might have in those particular regions. So after you find and put together a general strategy of which area you want to go and where you really fit in that particular region, then you need to begin the process of obviously a distribution search, making sure that from a logistics standpoint that you're taking care of, as well as making sure that your intellectual property is in order. Ultimately, that last piece is something that people forget about, that their number one concern is, well, let me just sell some product. Well, if you really believe that this is something that is a long-term play for you, and you believe that this brand has potential in there, make sure that you are protecting your intellectual property, because there are shysters all around the world that the second they see your product in a store and you've done all that work, the first thing they're going to do is go to the registry and see if you've done your work in terms of applying for your trademark or patent, whatever it might be, most likely trademark. So make sure you're doing that, because if they get it before you, there are different laws around the world. In some countries, especially in, say, Latin America, it's a first-to-file process, which what that means is the first person who registers or applies for registration of your mark has priority in getting that registration and essentially owning the rights to your brand. And unless you are ready to fight for it and challenge that application, you have a very good opportunity of all of a sudden building a brand for somebody who owns your trademark. So there are many things that you need to focus on in terms of selling your brand internationally. None of it is rocket science. It's a matter of putting together a checklist and going through it one by one, and making sure that you're well prepared and going and getting everything set for that particular market.
Correct. Well, you answered the second question there by yourself, how to avoid the single biggest mistake people make, right? But let's go to the next question.
Well,
yeah, if you want to address it.
Eduardo, I would say that that is a huge mistake, and to really, I guess, piggyback on that is a massive mistake you can make. You can go to market, you can build a brand, you can do all these things, and a lot of times, I'm oftentimes asked by the distributors questions in putting together, seeing if it's a good fit for both companies, is have you done your registration? Have you protected your trademark? Because these distributors in these countries are very well aware of it. And the last thing they want to do is start working with a company and building a brand to come find that there's some guy that owns the trademark, and eventually they get shut down as a result. And so I would say that is one of the largest mistakes you can make in terms of international business. Is protect your mark, protect it just like you did it here in the U.S., making sure that, consider every market that you go into as important and put it as a priority, just like you did building your brand here in the U.S.
Okay, thank you. Next question. It's how to tilt the rules in your favor for fast results.
Well, the number one thing that I always try to emphasize is that know that your local distributor that you're working with, and say you've done your due diligence, you know that they're a strong player because they have a long track record of working with other brands, you've seen their warehouse, you know that they have trucks, you see the merchandising program that they have to call on their stores, you know that they can build brands, you've done your homework and say, you know what, we have a great distributor. Now, sometimes people take that information and say, yeah, they're a great distributor, but I'm still going to try to figure out all the other stuff, like regulatory approval, and I'm going to try to figure out all the other aspects to what a reasonable listing fee is, or how to put together a strategy in terms of which channels to attack first in the retail sector, which retailers to go to first in the retail sector, and forget that you're not you forget to listen to your distributor, who will know that market better than you will ever know that market. Trust in your distributors to push you and put you in the right direction in many different aspects of your business. Oftentimes it's free advice. They're as much into providing you feedback to grow your brand, because they ultimately want to see it be successful as well. So ultimately you can find a lot of valuable insight just by listening and taking that advice from local distributors and doing that. Now, with that being said, you must be cognizant that this is your brand, and ultimately you will care about it more than anyone else in the whole world. No matter how great the distribution company you find on a global basis in a particular market, they will not care about the brand as much as you. So know that if they might give you advice to, say, with regulatory approval or particular channels, don't take it as the end-all, be-all advice. That's the way it'll be. Make sure you check and make sure that you're finding other resources, and we have always a saying is trust but verify. You want to make sure that you have trust with your distributors, but verify that what they're telling you is correct. So you can certainly tilt the results and move faster by listening to the local people on the ground and taking that advice and moving with it. They'll find ways to do it, but verify that information is correct. I've had many instances where people will say, it's really easy. All you got to do is X, Y, and Z, and all of a sudden you can start selling. Well, when we verified that, that information, it was completely false, and ultimately we could have gotten a lot of trouble and potentially even dealt with a drastic measures by the local government if we would have taken some of those advice. So make sure that you are, specifically when it relates to intellectual property and regulatory substance with the local government, making sure that you can take that advice but verify that it is true.
Okay, great answer. Now, somebody here asked me if you can mention again the book that you and Jorge Olson are working on. I know it's not ready yet, but if you can mention the title again.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's certainly it's a book that we've been working on for some time. The title has not been officially released, but we've been referring to it as calling it as Brand Without Borders. That is it's certainly not necessarily the title we will go with, but provides a pretty good reference of what the book will be about, which is really taking your brand and bringing it outside the U.S., taking it outside the U.S., and providing yourself more opportunities for a new customer base, a broader customer base, and essentially diversifying your business to being outside the U.S. And opportunities for obviously much higher growth and very bigger opportunities for larger sales and obviously some would say more success.
Okay, now next question from us is 3 secret strategies to multiply success.
First off, go and some people may have very little to know with it. So I'm going to speak to the people that really have very little information or just interested in exploring what international business can be like. The one thing that we'll talk about a little bit later, which I think is important, is to find local companies or agencies that have experience in that. I know that Eduardo, you and Jorge have your company and provide a lot of valuable insight and can do things that and provide input from, doing, hundreds, like you said, hundreds of different product launches and working with several different companies and different ideas. Companies like yourself can sniff out good and bad ideas and really point you in the right direction much quicker than if you just try to figure it all out on your own. Taking that valuable experience will save you a lot of time and a lot of money in the long run. The second real point that you should consider is do look to the U.S. government for assistance. There are several programs through the U.S. Department of Commerce that have people in every single state across, in particular, not only on the state level, but even on the local level, who their entire job is to work with local companies and promote export business, and whether that they can assist you with finding distribution partners, assist with the regulatory process, putting together information or details as it relates to accounts receivable insurance or guarantee on some accounts receivable. There are many, many different things that they can assist you with, and it's in some regards totally free or very, very nominal fees. And that alone should be, and I found in the very early days of my own experience, I utilized the U.S. Department of Commerce significantly in terms of they'll have, say you even have a distributor that you're interested in working with, that you can actually work with them and they'll use the local embassy in that particular country to do some due diligence on that particular company. So this company may talk a big game saying, oh, we're big, we have many warehouses and all these great brands and this and that, hundreds of employees. Well, they, again, trust but verify. The U.S. Department of Commerce can oftentimes provide you insight saying, well, we did a bit of research on this company, and actually we can't find any information. I'll give you an example. Is I had a company, and I'll just generalize it, but let's say South America, who claimed that they were the ones that started Red Bull, and they also worked with some other Red Bull brands and some other very large brands in and around South America. And I had actually a local source check them out, and all they were doing is just talking a big game. And in the end, you're going to run into that a lot. So make sure that you're verifying that these people that are interested in doing business with you, that they are legit, that they actually are, they will do and can do what they're saying they will do. So the U.S. Department of Commerce can provide a lot of insight, and I would recommend anyone who's interested in putting together more of an international program to look at that and look at the programs that they have. And then lastly, the other strategy is don't go out and try to hire a massive team to run your international business from day one. Some of you may have the resources to do that, but I would say probably the majority of small to mid-sized companies don't. You can do this. You can run and grow a global business with a small amount of overhead and operational. Utilize your local team and your current team in your U.S. business. A lot of times you'll find your team is interested in obviously either growing your business or they're just interested in learning more about international business. So, utilize the person who's doing accounts receivable and get them involved in terms of putting together credit checks or receivables or systems in place. Have your logistics people or people who handle logistics and shipping, get them to do a conference to sort out how to get a product from the U.S. and deliver it to any shore around the world. Get your marketing folks involved to assist with putting together POS and in-store advertising and utilizing. And then lastly, utilize your distributors to, when you're working with them, be asking them, do you assist with local marketing material? Do you have access to local printers? Do you have access to local media companies? Have you done media in the past? These are very important questions that you need answered. So essentially, you can outsource most of the major workloads so you can focus on business development and getting essentially project management in terms of getting all of these things checked off and getting to market.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And we have another question here. You touched on it a little bit in your last answers, how to work with the U.S. Department of Commerce.
Just go to, I believe it's U.S., just Google U.S. Department of Commerce, and you can find, just search on their page in terms of export programs. They call it different things in different states, but through the local office, through the U.S. Department of Commerce website, and they'll essentially, if you're in Seattle, they're located either in Olympia or they also have an office in downtown Seattle. So you can find a local. They'll have a local phone number. Simply just give them a call and set up an appointment to either go into their offices, or at times they'll actually even come to you. So it's a great program. Just simply Google U.S. Department of Commerce. And then also you can get on their email list, where oftentimes they'll put together a trade mission either in the local countries, or they'll actually bring, at least on an annual or biannual basis, they'll bring a lot of these ambassadors from all around the world to do conferences in your local area. So it's a resource that you can kind of dive into. It's something that's completely free, and I will say that the information that will be provided is very, very vetted and thorough. You're working with high professional, high caliber people within both the U.S. government and abroad.
Thank you. I agree. I've used them for other brands before. Now, last question from us is, how do you differentiate? And this question has been asked by 3 of our listeners as well in different ways, by Dennis and by Scott and by John. So we're answering the questions of our listeners now as well, and different ways of asking, but basically they want to know 5-Hour Energy, what does your brand have that others in the U.S. market doesn't? What makes it so successful?
Well, it's a good question, and I think a lot of it, to be honest with you, is focus. You'll find that a lot of companies, a lot of brands, a lot of owners, a lot of CEOs will have what I try to dub the shiny object syndrome. where they'll be working on a project and all of a sudden something catches their attention and then they run over to that. And then the next shiny object catches their attention and they run over to that. And meanwhile, the first thing that they were working on has completely been forgotten and lost by the wayside. There is a lot to be said about having a product and focusing your efforts behind it. Obviously, you need to know when you have a winner and when you don't, and when you have the winner that you ride, essentially ride that horse. I think for instance, with 5 Hour Energy, number one, it's a great product. The product works. When people take it, they like it, and they continue to take it again. Number two, this was the only product, and really still is the only product the company produces and sells. And so you have a team focused on making sure that this product is marketed correctly, is sold and merchandised correctly, has new, creative, thoughtful marketing strategies in terms of educating consumers on how to buy it, where to buy it, when they should buy it, why they should buy it. And because of that laser focus, it provides tremendous amount of insight and creativity and speed to market and speed to ideas to execution in terms of doing it. So if your idea is to, say, make a water, and then next week your idea is to make a candy bar, and then the next week your idea is to make some potato chip brand, then I think you're going to find that you're going to have 3 brands that are mediocre and ultimately probably won't be successful. So if I were to pin it on 2 main things, it's a great product, it hit it at the market at the right time, and there's an excellent staff on our team that just focuses on making sure that brand is successful.
And just to add to that, I agree, it is a great product, and you were first to market, so that gives you a jump, but it's been a quality product throughout the years, and the company focusing on keeping that quality. That's why it hasn't suffered. On the contrary, it's been growing every year, exponentially. So keeping up quality is also important. Now, going to questions from our listeners, Asim asks, can you recommend a co-packer for formulation and packaging? Actually, we can take care of that, Asim. Call the office at 888-276-5688 or 619-489-0230 in San Diego. Dennis asks, what does Rob think was the key to 5 Hour Energy success when compared to the competitors? Dennis, we kind of went over this one right now. Also, Todd asks, do you think licensing for out-of-country distribution is a good idea?
That's a really good question, actually. I think it really does depend on your particular model and what your goals are. But certainly, I've other roles. Say when I was with Jones Soda, we looked at several different opportunities to do more of a concentrate model, where you would sell the concentrate and assist in the marketing and rollout strategy. So essentially, it was more of a licensing type of agreement. It really depends. I think that it's an option worth looking at. Depends, I think, on your cash position. If you have a great brand and you're looking to expand it, it would certainly be worth looking at. I wouldn't. I've never done it personally, mainly because each brand that I've worked with was strong enough and was in a good enough position where we could use it as more of an export type model. and we could support it through that. But oftentimes you will run into distribution companies that are also bottlers, that also have manufacturing ties, and certainly by doing something like that, you can provide them or come to an agreement with this particular company that they are chipping in the majority of the funds necessary for sales and marketing. You know, you need to be honest with yourself and make sure that you are in a position to support the brand and grow it like you did here in the U.S. It doesn't come for, it's not free, and it's certainly not cheap. So you need to make sure that, you know, what type of cash position your company's in and make an assessment accordingly. The other thing to look at, instead of maybe doing a licensing agreement, is look for a distributor and provide them an exclusivity for, say, a number of years based on a certain sales expectation. I have no problem at times signing up a distributor for a whole market if they're willing to show me that they will put a significant investment in and they'll hit a certain quota of sales in that particular market. And if they don't do either of those things, if they don't invest or they don't sell to the amount that we agreed on, then I reserve the right to either get rid of them or use or bring on additional distributors. So always provide yourself options, and if in the event that people aren't performing, whether it's through a license agreement or an exclusive distribution agreement, that you have an out, that you have the ability to explore other companies if necessary.
Okay, thank you. Now, Asim asks you, Rob, are you licensing the brand to local bottlers, or do you actually export finished product? How would you determine those fees if so? You export, yes, finished product.
Sure. We export, and specifically the reason why is we own and operate our own manufacturing, and our brand and quality is the most important thing. One of the most important things to our company. For now, 5 Hour Energy, we have a certain luxury that the bottle's quite small and we can fit quite a few of them in a container. And so an export makes a lot of sense, but some people on the call might be doing larger packaging and beverage brands where it gets quite expensive to ship containers of say 12-ounce or 16-ounce products. So doing and coming up with an agreement with more shipping concentrates or that, and working with a local co-packer is something that you should look to. But in the very early days, I think it's recommended that you keep your current manufacturing and do it as an export, because you're going to want to make sure that the product's running. You know, set yourself a proof of concept before you start investing in and outsourcing manufacturing. Make sure that you have a customer base and that it's growing, because it's certainly easier to produce locally and take a larger hit on logistics and pay a little more in logistics than investing a lot in manufacturing and then come to find that the product just didn't take off, and that does happen.
Okay, great response. Asim asks, what specific markets is 5 Hour Energy pursuing internationally, and why?
We are in the process of launching in Mexico. We're also focusing a lot in Asia right now. So the strategy is really around finding a couple of key markets, and we touched on this a little bit on our last webinar, which is to find a couple of key markets as your local beachhead markets, which are, for instance, in the Netherlands. We want to be successful in the Netherlands before we even consider going into Germany. And it's a much smaller market, much less expensive, but also has a lot of the same characteristics that Germany would have, some of the same characteristics that Scandinavia would have. So the focus is really in those particular markets. We want to make sure we establish ourselves, provide a lot of great examples of growth, and then we'll continue to expand. Again, that focus point that I brought up earlier goes beyond just, focusing just maybe on one or two products and not having a litany of different products to go. It also goes to don't go too fast. Don't try to launch into 30 markets in 2 years. You're going to find you're spread too thin, and you won't provide the distributors and the local people the necessary resources and focus that they need to grow the market. So we're really focused on a couple of key markets in Europe, Latin America, and Asia. We'll continue to focus on those, and as it seems, as we continue to grow in those markets, and more opportunities in the surrounding countries and markets around the ones that we're currently in, will open up.
Okay, thank you. Now, Kathleen asks, it's impossible to trademark in every country. Which countries should one trademark their products in? I guess first.
Good question, and I'm not a trademark lawyer. So don't take my feedback in terms of the exact answer. I think you should definitely verify what I'm telling you. But in my experience, I found a couple of things that you could look at. Is you're right, it would be very expensive to trademark in 50 countries, especially as you continue to protect those marks, because ultimately people will try to, a trademark's only as strong as your ability to fight for it. So even though you might have registered it, some people will continue to try to, for instance, 5-hour energy, you're going to find, I can't tell you how many times I've seen 6-hour energy and 12-hour energy and 6-hour this, and, and it's all just a blatant ripoff of what our trademark is. But, the reason why in some ways we're successful in that is that we don't take it. If they're going to try to just ride on the coattails of everything we've worked so hard to build, then we're going to make sure and fight it. And we do that. But it certainly takes a lot of resources to do that. So to answer your question, there'd be two things. One is, focus on just a couple of key markets and maybe a couple of key regions for you, and get those registered in those markets. Also, particular regions, for instance, the EU, you can look to get trademark and recognition of your mark throughout the EU. It's not quite as strong as, say, getting it registered in the individual markets or individual countries, but certainly different countries and regions have an alliance of sorts and a recognition of marks. And so certainly a good intellectual property lawyer would be able to run through that. And also, for instance, the U.S. Department of Commerce also has very interesting information that they can provide you on that as well. But that would be just a kind of a general statement. But certainly, if it's something that you're serious on, I would recommend you speak with an intellectual property lawyer, or also do a bit of research through the U.S. government.
Okay, we just have a couple more questions. This gives way to Chris's question. Is corruption and knockoffs a concern in China? What do you think about China? And do you think trade shows are a good avenue to find the right distributor in a country like China?
Well, China, no matter if you speak with a local Chinese businessman or anyone who's done business in China, counterfeit products is a reality, and though it's very interesting, it's a very interesting potential just due to the growing middle class as well as just the sheer number of people. It is extremely complicated, and more so than this call and this particular webinar can go into.
Mm-hmm.
My best recommendation to you, and certainly one that I'm currently living, is I would leave China for a later stage market. I oftentimes try to break up our development into phases. You would say phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. I would put China certainly in the brands that I've worked with as a phase 3 market, unless you're very, very familiar with it and have a lot of in that particular market. There are tons of other markets in and around that area that are growing, that have huge growth potential, that are a bit more manageable, and have a little less, or certainly a lot less, opportunity for corruption. I would recommend, for instance, Thailand is a very interesting emerging market right now. Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia. These markets here are in Southeast Asia are growing. Vietnam's another one that's quite interesting. That are much more manageable. That you can find local distributors that will work hard for your brand, but certainly won't be lost in the complexity and as you mentioned earlier, some of the corruption and counterfeiting that ultimately occurs. Your other question in terms of trade shows, 100%. I think trade shows are very, very valuable to do. You should note that some trade shows are more of a regional type show. Like, for instance, in Europe, they have a Nuga and Sial, which is very much a large swath of people in and around Europe, but you'll also see a lot of people around the world that will come to that show. You will get a lot of people that will claim that they're the best and the greatest that you've ever met, and they're certainly not. So you have to vet these people and don't just think that what they're telling you at that trade show is all true, and a lot of times it's just a lot of talk. So I think trade shows are of value if you are being serious about launching in those markets. They're not cheap to take part in, but they are of value. I've never done a trade show that didn't get me the return back. I'll put it that way. It seems a little expensive to look at, because you'll look at just sometimes $15,000 just for the base, and then you got travel costs and hotels and all those details. So certainly trade shows are expensive to take part. If you're not in a position to do that, then certainly go to the show. Maybe walk the show. They'll oftentimes send out the list of participating companies, whether it's brands or sometimes logistics companies. Try to set up an appointment with them before you go. Don't just try to show up and think that everyone's going to come talk to you. They're very busy, and they're busy places. I, for instance, have done many shows around the world, and I'm always most impressed when companies come to me ahead of time and say, here's who I am. We're very interested in your brand. We'd like to set an appointment for this day at this time. And at that point, I'm plugging them into my calendar, and I'm going to make sure and take time to meet with them because they took the time to do that. So be professional. Don't just be a gunslinger at these trade shows. Be professional, plan ahead, and you'll find the most results by doing that.
Okay, I agree. I've been to trade shows for over 10 years, and that's a great response. Now, Seem asks, does 5 Hour Energy look at a market as a whole, or do you go specific? And he puts an example, Latin America or Mexico?
Well, it depends on the market. I certainly like to think of it as more of a regional, but then you also have to look at it you know, you look at it, boil it down to the particular market itself. So, yeah, Latin America is certainly a generalization, but I would say maybe Mexico is in some ways one in its own. But I would kind of almost group a little bit with Panama and maybe parts of Central America, just so you can group it. But all those markets are very different. Certainly, Eduardo could probably speak to that better than me. But every market, every country has different cultures, different ideas, different retailers, different ways of doing things. But depending on how you're putting together your business plan, you can certainly break those up into certain regions. For instance, in Europe, I break it up into, say, Northern Western Europe, which includes, say, Scandinavia, the Netherlands, Germany, Denmark, so forth. You have the Southwestern Europe, which includes Spain, Italy, Portugal, Morocco. So you can kind of bunch it up into kind of different regions that you would deem necessary. But ultimately, don't try to generalize Latin America as Mexico. Don't try to generalize Europe as Germany. So people are different all around the world, and they have a lot of pride in their local cultures, and you need to recognize that.
I agree. Now, the second part of the question is, what's a realistic budget to have in developing a single market?
It really depends on the market. It depends on the region. It depends on the brand. It depends on there's just so many questions, and certainly it depends on a lot of things. So I would say that as a general you need to focus on the particular channels and that you're going to be going to retail channels, whether it's pharmacy, convenience, mass, drug. You need to make sure that those particular regions are checked off. But yeah, I'm like, it's too general of a question, and any response I give would be too watered down. So.
Oh no, I understand, and yeah, and it depends a lot on the budget and the goal of the company as well. I agree. Another question comes from Juan Almeida. Hey Juan, how are you doing? Do you manage your brand with your own team in each country, or how do you?
Typically, what I'll do is I'll work with a good local distributor to manage and help manage the brand locally. Once the brand has become and gets to a certain sales level and operational level, you may consider hiring a regional manager or a country manager that works directly for your company. But given local labor laws and the complexity of that, and oftentimes the cost of overhead, it's much better to work with, I would recommend that working with a local distributor that has the sales force, that has the merchandisers, that has the trucks, that has the sales staff going out there and doing that, and that you're providing visits accordingly and making sure you're checking that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But it really depends on what type of cash you're willing to put up. But I'm more leaning on more of an entrepreneurial side, where you can keep your optional costs lower and not deal with the local labor laws, which are very, very complex in some markets, and away from getting in those issues by just working with a local distributor and providing them a margin for them to make money that way.
Okay. Now, Arthur in Europe, in the UK, he wants to know what would you recommend when handling a large multinational distributor wanting to have exclusivity across Europe and UK. If you do performance minimums, volume projections, guarantees. Basically, he goes on, but he wants to know how to maximize sales when covering multiple countries.
I would say this: be very, very careful when people start promising you to cover such large areas. We alluded to this earlier, how different Germany is from France, obviously, or Spain is different than Italy. There's a lot of similarities, different retailers, different complexities. So my question would be is, first off, I've never run into a company, maybe there's one or two companies I could think of that cover maybe a 5-country area, but certainly not all Europe. If they say that they can do all Europe, then I think they're biting off more than they can chew. I certainly would recommend that you certainly would provide them one market. Let's see how you do in one market. Hey, if you do a great job, then yeah, we'll consider 2. I'll give you, for example, my distributor in Spain is an exclusive distributor, does a great job, and is interested in launching us in Portugal and has the resources in which to do that. And that might be something that I could consider, but certainly would not have been on the table until they show that they can be successful in the one market. So provide yourself plenty of options, and if they're saying it's an all or nothing type deal, then walk away, because they're obviously it's not the right partner. Any good businessman, if they really believe in the brand, are going to be willing to prove themselves and do a good job before they expect to have such a huge region like all in Europe.
Okay, great answer. Let's see, just a couple more questions. Thank you for your time again, Rob. Let's see, and Dennis asks, in regulatory standpoint, internationally, basically his question is, which markets do you feel are easiest to access from a regulation market?
Eduardo, you cut out there. I'm sorry, I missed it.
Oh, okay. Dennis is asking, from a regulatory standpoint, do you find certain international markets more difficult than others? Which markets are easy to access?
Yeah, it's a good question. It really depends on the type of product that you have. Certainly, with, say, a nutritional supplement like 5-Hour Energy, it definitely holds a higher level of challenge as it relates to getting regulatory approval. But I would say that every market in Europe has a fairly standard process, which is a market notification. And as long as you fit within those particular levels of ingredients or whatever it might be, and that the HS code is and the ingredients are in line with what they approve, then essentially you have to provide a notification in those markets, and it's fairly straightforward, and they're very quick to respond in terms of if there's some particular changes that need to be made either to your formula or to your label and so forth. So I would say Europe is probably the most advanced, and then I would also say that Southeast Asia seems to be moving in the direction of providing a little bit more ease to and very set systems in place to get approval to sell in those markets. Certainly, some of the most complex markets to to be very watchful of if you're interested in launching. Korea and Japan and Asia and as well as China are probably the most difficult in the world in terms of getting approval. And Brazil, Mexico, you could see that is quite difficult as well, and a lot of the Latin American markets as well. So yeah, overall, that would be the advice I'd give to you, depending on the complexity. I would, if you want to not deal with a real challenging one in the early go, stay away from Japan and Korea and a lot of parts of Latin America.
Okay. And you're right. You have your work cut out for you there. You mentioned a lot of them being very difficult. Let me see. We have a couple from, just to finish this. It says, in your experience, what's the most efficient way to finance a startup company without diluting future profits? This comes from Dennis. Actually, Dennis, we can help you with that here at Liquid Brands. Just to mention our number locally in San Diego, it's 619-489-0230, and it's 888-276-5688. Also, how do you get funding to start your brand? This is from Sorit Wilson. Again, we have a program for that as well, for getting funding for particular startups, depending on what phase you're in. Our local number in San Diego, again, it's 619-489-0230. Now, John Murphy wants to know, what percentage of your total budget when attacking an international market do you recommend for your marketing efforts?
Good question. It really depends on the market. Different markets will require a larger amount of resources to be successful. For instance, in Europe, your listing fees and in-store promotional fees will be very expensive. But as a general rule of thumb, I would say in the very early days, I would expect at least 30 to 40% of an investment in going to really make it a good push. And then I would try to maximize your investment by working with a local company that are willing to put some skin in the game as well, and investing some of their margin and into the market. But yeah, it really depends on each market, and obviously, if you had one in mind, we could probably get into some more of the details at a later date.
Now, Rob, in the same vein, Arthur asks, what percentage margin do you provide your smaller regional distributor to one that differs a larger mass market distributor?
That's also, I would stay south of 20% for a master distributor, say 15 to 20%. Sometimes if it's more than that, a margin expectation, they're showing a very high level of investment. But it really all depends on how you're going to work the deal. Know that these are your local partners and your local distributors, and they are going to want to make money. If it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense. So make sure, in some ways, don't try to squeeze them too much, because ultimately they're the ones that are going to be pushing your brand in the very early days and potentially investing in the brand in the very early days. And so it's important that they're making some money and you want them to make money. Ultimately, if it's something that has grown and become very successful, you certainly can renegotiate rates at a later date, and say you've grown into a $100 million business, maybe 20% seems a little rich at that point. But in the very early days, just know your level of investment should be higher to ensure that they're putting some skin in the game, and use it as as a piece to negotiating the best deal for you and your brand.
Okay, great. And Steve says, what's the best way for a startup to find an industry expert to help navigate them initially to actually help run the company? Well, obviously, Steve, that's what we do here. Jorge, Olson, our team, and I at Liquid Brands. Feel free to schedule an appointment with us at 619-489-0230 or 888-276-5688. Let me see. And now Arthur asks, do you have any suggestions or knowledge on the possibility of franchising distribution centers in different countries as a substitute for licensing?
Is by yeah, I think I know what he's asking, and first off, before I answer, I just want to say thank you for everybody. I know it's been about an hour, and we'll probably end the call and the webinar after I'm answering this question. Certainly, everybody spent a lot of time, and we'll continue to do these in the future. But overall, I would say that these you should certainly consider whether you call it a franchise or just a master distribution format or a licensing. The key aspect to that is performance, and know that it's your brand, and if you're going to be giving a percentage of the company or the rights to the brand in that particular area, then they need to perform, and if they don't, then you can get out at any time. So know what expectations you have for that particular market, and make sure that they're on the same page. Make sure you get a good agreement in place, and so that all expectations are set up from the very beginning. If things are going great, continue, but if they aren't performing to the expectation, that you can move on and do something else.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you very much, Rob. People are asking the book will be out. I think we'll have more information on that on future webinars, hopefully very soon. Your next webinar would be in a couple of weeks. We'll announce it through email as well. And I'd like to thank you for your time. Anybody who has more questions?
My pleasure, Eduardo. Thank you so much, and thanks. My pleasure, and thank you again, and look forward to getting everybody back, and we'll certainly talking about more topics in the.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rob.
Thanks so much.